Coming at you with another Once Human tutorial guide, this time on the current epitome of in-game in Once Human, known as the Prime Wars. If you're not familiar with what the Prime Wars are, they will pop up on the map with these little tower looking symbols, and underneath them they will show the difficulty that each one pertains to. When a Prime War is starting, which this one over here is, which one was it? They're about to start one of them. There's one of them they were about to start. But anyway, if they're actually active, it will show a timer. This one right here, Last Oasis, that's what it was. When they're active like this, they'll show the timer, they'll show how many people are in it, and they'll show how long you have until the dungeon closes. You can then click on it, and you will have an option to teleport. This is the quickest way to get in, but it requires the Prime War to already be started for you to teleport over. Once you get inside, after a bit of loading, you'll, and this being a nightmare, this is the highest difficulty one, you'll have only a certain amount of time to get in and get set up. This one's already started. So we're just going to kind of run in here and see what the lay of the land is here. We're coming in a little bit late because they already started it whilst we were starting the video. And all the bosses will spawn. As you can see here, we've got the Shadow Hound running around. Actually about to break, so I'm going to wait to throw some damage on him. And the mechanics will be repeated, and we'll cover all of these as we move through the video. I just wanted to show you how you actually get into the Prime War, and now we'll cut to some more detailed information on all these different bosses. Okay, so the Prime War is broken down into 3 bosses you'll have seen previously: the Shadow Hound, the Ravenous Hunter, and the Secret Servitor. There will be 4 difficulties of these bosses you'll have to progress through: easy, hard, pro, and then nightmare. Clearing each Prime War for the first time rewards a one-time reward of some Star Crom, and then you receive a crate based on individual performance in the Prime War. Anybody can join an easy mode Prime War, but past easy mode you require a permit that you unlock from reaching tier 3 rewards of the previous difficulty. You can see all this from right there on the details. Pick any one you really want to look at. You can see here what is required to get each tier of crate. You'll need to get the tier 3 variant in order to unlock the next tier. So this is a pro one, so you have to get tier 3 reward in pro in order to move on to nightmare. You'll have to get a tier 3 of a, where's a hard one at? Of a hard one like Giant Stare in order to move on to pro. So if you have not gotten the tier 3 reward and unlocked the access card, don't bother even trying to go into it, because you'll just get booted out and you'll just waste your time. And that can be particularly annoying if you're, you know, far away from where the Prime War starts, and then you get booted. Here they are, they show up here, and then you'll end up out in the middle of the desert or whatever if it's like a pro mode or something like that. Then you have to teleport back or drive all the way back. You can also check it in your inventory here under this tab, the special tab. You know, see here I have the Frontier Pass Hard, Frontier Pass Pro, and Frontier Pass Nightmare in order to get into every difficulty. So make sure that you have those before you attempt to move up in tier. Then they will show a check mark whenever you've actually gotten the first clear bonus. So you can kind of quickly look across the board here and say, do I have all the first tier bonuses? Do I have all that free Star Crown I could be getting? In order to get that, you know, free initial Prime War boost to Star Crown, all you have to do is be there for the victory. You do not have to get all the way to tier 3. The tier 3 is just required for the permit and just in general to get the best box. There is no limit to the amount of these you can farm per day. So if you have a really active server, it's running a lot of Prime Wars, and you want to keep getting like tier 3 boxes, you can. But they do require controllers in order to open. So your limitation is really the amount of controllers that you have, rather than how quickly you can farm them. They do have a cooldown as well once you have completed one. We just completed this one. Last Oasis, it's a 30-minute cooldown, so it does take a little bit of time to come back. And depending on how active your server is, how many people are bringing missiles and all that kind of stuff like that, especially on nightmare level, because it does require a lot of missiles, you may not be able to farm them like all day. It really just kind of depends. Right now our server is really pushing the server progression, trying to get the unlocks for the server. We have a really active and cooperative community, so we're up at the tier 2 already. So a lot of people are running them a lot on our server, which is PvE 15. If you happen to be on the same server as me, shout outs to you. So the simplest way to really explain Prime War is that it can be broken down into 4 simple phases. The first phase is essentially the setup phase. This is where you can manually travel to the location of the Prime War, and you can go in and preemptively start setting up defenses around the restrainer. You can go ahead and set up turrets. You can clear out trees, different things like that. You can manually move to the position and start setting up before you actually activate the Prime War. It's highly advisable to do this because once you actually activate the Prime War, you don't have a whole lot of time to actually set up. And if you're behind and the bosses start spawning, you can just lose very quickly, especially if you don't have your defenses set up ahead of time. And it helps to have the turrets and stuff set up, especially pre-nightmare. That way you can go ahead and start damaging the shield's boss immediately before they start moving toward the restrainer. So that being the first phase, being the sort of like the pre-setup phase. The second phase I'm going to call the shield phase. This is when the boss actually first spawns and can actually take damage. They will have a protective shield around them. You'll see that on the bar, and you can see that in some of the footage that we'll show as we move through. And you need to bring this shield down in order to actually damage its HP bar directly. The best way to do this is with biomass missiles, and it will be continuously trying to move forward toward the restrainer in an attempt to destroy it. At this phase, normal gunfire and explosives are not very effective, with a few small exceptions, which we'll cover later in the sort of like tips and tricks and extra information portion of the video. But this is why defenses are important to distract the boss. It's very important to have these things already built, because once they spawn, they're just going to start making a direct line towards your restrainer. They're only going to stop if structures are in the way to slow them down. You can distract them plenty well with just basic wood defenses. You don't necessarily need to build marble and really high level stuff, because they destroy everything pretty fast. It's more about volume and good placement. Don't just throw them willy-nilly. I mean, look at where the boss spawns in the silver pool, look around at where the restrainer is, and kind of build stuff in between. I have seen some people building stuff just like way off to the side somewhere, and it's just like, boss is never gonna hit those are just taking up building limit. There's no point in that being there. And since we can't destroy them because they were built by somebody else, those buildings just end up taking up the limit, you know, for no reason at all, though they will never be useful. So don't leave those there. The third phase is the actual DPS phase. This is when the shield breaks and when small arms fire and explosives and stuff like that are actually going to be effective. The window for this is very small, maybe 30 seconds, can even feel like less with the lag. It's a very short window, so be prepared to hop off your turret if you're manning a turret because you've been using missiles, or if you're waiting by just to do straight up damage. Be ready to mag dump as hard as you can in this very short window. If not enough DPS is done during this phase, it will stand back up, cover itself in a shield once again. Then you have to go through the shield phase all over again. Sometimes, depending on the difficulty, this is unavoidable. But for lower level stuff, I'd say like below pro in particular, if you have sufficient DPS in the instance, it really shouldn't take more than one phase. If it does, you know, it just kind of is what it is. It's going to end up taking more missiles. Unfortunate. That's why usually if you're going to do, especially if you're in an advanced stage on your server, like most people are already to pro or to nightmare, and you just want to help low level players, or you're a low level player yourself, or you're you're behind in progression, maybe you haven't been playing as much, or you come into the game late, ask people if they'll just come and be DPS. Some people may not want to waste their missiles on lower level content, but they will come and just throw damage down on the boss, which is still extremely useful because you really need that damage. And those high level players with completed builds, maybe they're just bored and hanging around, they're willing to come in and just help you out. That way you can come to the higher level Prime War and contribute your missiles to help them out later. This is a good system. Everybody benefits. It may require you to do a lot of the heavy lifting with the missiles, which means you'll have to gather all the materials and craft the missiles for yourself. But still, if you only have to go through one cycle, it doesn't really take that many missiles. And we'll go over the amount of missiles you should bring in the later part of the video as well. And then the final phase is a little bit different depending on each boss. Each boss will perform a different unique mechanic when they reach the final phase, which is usually around like 15 to 20% of their life bar remaining. The Ravenous Hunter, which is the guy with the big turret on his arm, the Gatling gun, will fire into the air multiple times, and then a gigantic missile will fly into the sky and start moving toward the ground. You need to look up and DPS that before it lands and detonates on the ground. The Shadow Hound will leap into the sky, much like he does in the story version, except in this case he will land near the restrainer and must be killed very, very quickly, because if he's even if he's really, really far away from it, he's going to teleport right next to it. You want to kill him ASAP or he will destroy it. So start moving towards the location of the restrainer and wait for the hound to land, but do not let it land on you because he will kill you. So do not stand directly underneath where he's going to land on the restrainer, but have a good view on that location. The way you can start hitting him as soon as he lands. Excuse me. The servitor will split into 3 images, and you need to DPS the correct one. The right image that you need to DPS will have black wings. The other ones will have icy looking wings. So as it starts to move around and teleport and split apart, wait for it to stop doing its animation, swapping between different locations. And when you see the black wings, start targeting that one. It needs to be killed relatively quickly. Usually it can be pretty close to the restrainer once you get to this phase, because it is a flying boss, which means it moves a little bit quicker across the terrain. So it's very important to target the right one as quickly as possible. If you DPS the wrong one, you will, however, fail the fight. So make sure you're paying attention. If you're not sure which one to hit, or it's swapping still, just wait. It's better to wait than to choose the wrong one and just cause everybody to fail. And it is going to be relatively low health when you get to this stage, so it's going to die pretty fast. So you don't want to just start blasting away on the wrong one. I have seen it bug. We had one where the one that I saw with black wings was not the one that actually had black wings for everybody else. I think it was lag, but sometimes this can happen. If you're unsure, generally just follow everybody's tracer fire. If everybody's shooting at one but you don't see that one as having black wings, go with the crowd. Like sometimes the crowd can be wrong, but at least if you're going with the crowd more often than not, you're going to be okay, because sometimes it can bug. I've only seen it happen once, but I did want to add it in here as a disclaimer, just in case you have that problem happen where you're like, why is everybody shooting the wrong one? It may be they're shooting the right one. It's just your screen got lagged or something, and you're not seeing it correctly. So that's the 4 basic phases of the Prime War. Once you understand that the Prime War essentially just consists of these 4 basic phases, the shield phase and the DPS phase being repeated as many times as is necessary, it's a relatively simple operation in order to do it. It seems really complicated at first, but it's actually very simple. All right, so there are a couple of different ways to get points in the Prime War itself. The first, easiest, and best way to get points is called the Silver Plague Vanquisher. Best way to get it, best way to get your rating up in a Prime War, just shoot missiles and break the shield on the boss. Rewards the most and the most consistent amount of points. If you bring enough missiles along, go ahead and max this one out every single time. You will always get all the boxes. This is the easiest one to do. The second one is called Monster Elimination. This is DPS on the boss once the shield is down. I believe it also counts for some of the little ads that spawn, though, you know, you don't get very many points for those. This is mainly about hitting the boss. It's very important as well, but if you can't break the shield, there's really no point, and you won't get this opportunity anyway. So don't come into a Prime War thinking this is how I'm going to get all my rating. I'm just going to do damage to the boss. You don't get as many points for this, and if people don't bring missiles, you're not going to get any damage to the boss anyway. So don't rely on this one unless you're just trying to help out lower level or lower tier players DPS through like easy or hard difficulty or something like that. If you're strictly coming along just to be a DPS helper, that's fine. But if you're running like, you know, content that's current for your progression, or you're doing pro or nightmare, do not rely on this. It's just an extra way to get some rating. And then you have defense structures. This is points you get for building structures and defenses in the Prime War itself. Usually best accomplished or early on before the Prime War starts, but you can throw up some more if the boss is getting close, or there's not enough structures near it, or you just want to build some platforms in order to you know, set up your turret on, different things like that. This is definitely an important one, but make sure you aren't putting defenses in places that block like line of sight for other players, because if somebody's got their turret set up and you all of a sudden plop a structure in front of it or build a bunch of walls that block the boss or something like that, it's going to make it a lot harder for people to get the damage in, which is really the main thing. So be sort of aware of where you're placing them, and if, you know, they're built outside of the boss's path, like say you wanted to set up a nice little spot on a cliffside or something like that, so you have a nice overwatch on the boss but not necessarily in the boss's path, make sure you destroy those after the Prime War concludes. That way you're not taking up build limits with structures that the boss is never going to destroy, and then people can't build more defensive ones. So dismantle all your stuff at the end. And then the fourth and final and least really effective way of getting points is team support, which is healing and reviving other players. It's not often that people die in Prime War. It's pretty hard to die in the Prime War. The bosses really don't do much damage to players directly. You really have to sort of go out of your way in order to die. But if somebody does go down, like they fall or something like that, and you see them, go ahead and pick them up. It is worth points, and that, you know, you get a DPS back on the field or whatever may be the case. And then there are 3 perks I would say are the most recommended perks for Prime War that we want to cover real quickly. The first one being the oops, I spelled this incorrectly, the biomass missile perk that increases the yield to 3 missiles per craft and reduces the weight by 80%. This one is huge. This is a massive resource saver. If you do not have this perk, try and get this perk on somebody in your warband. If you're a solo player and you're not in a warband, try and find somebody on your server that is willing to craft the missiles for you, because getting 3 for the price of 1, not to mention the weight, cannot be overestimated, because the missiles are very heavy. Try and get this as much as possible. Try and find somebody to make your missiles for you. The red plasma perk, this one's not 100% necessary, but it is nice, especially once you get to nightmare, because the red plasma does a lot more damage, and I believe it allows you to do damage to the Manibus arms even without picking up the plasma off the ground. I'm not 100% on this, but if you're like really kind of maxed out at in-game and you already have plenty of resources, the red plasma is pretty nice. Not necessary, but nice. And the other one I would say is necessary is the Gatling Cannon Power Blast upgrade, which gives you 30% more damage on the Gatling. This is a huge damage increase. You know, if you can get it, it's a really nice thing. If you have a warband mate who has it, they can drop Gatling turrets for you in the Prime War. If you guys do it together, you know, you can run in, build a couple of platforms and be like, hey, come over here and drop the gun for me. And they'll give you 30% more damage. This is pretty nice. This helps guarantee you getting this Silver Plague Vanquisher reward, especially in like Nightmare, where you're going to fight the bosses over and over and over again as they keep spawning. Again, not strictly like 100% necessary, not like the resource saver one feels like it's 100% necessary, but it's a very nice one. And because it counts on the turret itself, as I say, a friend can drop it for you, and you can benefit from this 30% more damage, and then they can just disassemble the turret after the fight is over and get the resources back. So it's a pretty nice one if you coordinate this with some hive mates or something like that. And at least on my server on PvE 15, I know there are some players out there that have this perk and they go ahead and build a couple of turrets around so that people can just jump on them and get that extra bonus damage as well. There's, you know, some helpful folks out there, but you know, it's not 100% necessary. It's just nice. Okay, and the last section we want to go over is just sort of some general like tips and tricks in order to help you out in these Prime Wars. The first one being, when it comes to building defensive structures, I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the video, it's not necessary to build tier 3 marble. Wood can delay the boss plenty if people are doing their job and staggering the boss with missiles and DPSing it down sufficiently. For the most part, they kind of just rip through marble at almost the same rate as wood. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference. If you've got plenty of materials for tier 3 marble and you want to throw it up, it's perfectly fine as well, but it's just not 100% necessary. The Gatling tier 2 turret is vastly preferred. It does more damage, saves you rockets. It's just good all the way around. You want to be using less resources and being as efficient as possible, and it's only just a little bit further down the tree. When you get in and you start building, you want to be building near the silver pool on the ground. It's pretty hard to miss this once you see it and you know what it looks like. A giant pool of like silver liquidy looking stuff, kind of like the Terminator is made out of in T2. You know, if you're around in the 90s, remember the old Terminator movie? That is where the boss will spawn. So that's when you would be building your defensive buildings in order to slow him down. You want to have your turret with a good view of that location, all of that stuff. A great tip as well to know when it comes to the turrets and the structures is to, if a Prime War is just starting up and you want to get into it, teleport to your base, build about 4 marble platforms, and then throw down like 2 Gatling turrets, and that way it pulls the resources from your base, and then disassemble them all. That way you pull all the resources into your inventory, and then you have everything you need in order to start the Prime War already in your inventory. A further tip for this that I sometimes like to employ as well is to make these in the base. That way I have the materials, and then put all the materials into a vehicle, such as the large ATV/Jeep. Some people are saying that the vehicles can cause lag in the Prime War. I don't know how true that is, because it's always pretty laggy in the Prime Wars right now, and I haven't really noticed any correlation between seeing a couple of vehicles versus not seeing a couple of vehicles. I've been in Prime Wars where I haven't seen a single vehicle and it's still crazy laggy. It's anybody's guess, but if for whatever reason you think you may have trouble remembering to bring some missiles or remembering to bring the materials to build a Gatling, I would rather advise you to put it in your car and jump into the Prime War and spawn your car in the Prime War and pull the materials out. That way you can be helpful, rather than advise you not to bring it because it may be adding some small amount of extra lag. Honestly, they just need to optimize this better. This is on the devs. This is not on the community. There's just issues with it. Lag is going to be the most difficult thing you got to deal with. Another sort of tip to keep in mind, if you want to give yourself some free points, give yourself a little bit of a boost, you can go into the Prime War already damaged and heal yourself for some easy points. A couple of ways to do this. You know, the obvious one would be like jumping off a building or something. Obviously that's a little more tricky, so you don't take too much damage. You know, if you know a spot you can jump off your base and take about half your life off. You can eat like some raw food and cause yourself some damage. You can throw a grenade at your feet, anything like that, to just drop your HP a bit, and then, you know, teleport yourself in, pop an activator, and you'll get credit for healing right off the bat. It's just a little extra boost. As we mentioned earlier, build structures. Building structures gives you points as well, though of course, again, be aware of line of sight. Don't block people's ability to see the boss and to do damage. And the last tip that I really want to emphasize a lot is to stagger shots to account for lag. Lag is going to be the biggest thing you got to fight. If you just spam click, the rockets will fire off, but they won't actually do damage, so you'll just be wasting rockets. I've seen people complain about this, like, how did I use 100 rockets? Well, you used 100 rockets really quickly because you're just spamming the button. That doesn't help. Give it a second or two, wait for the damage to register, and then fire off another shot. And you can sort of like get the rhythm of this as you watch how quickly the shots register. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit more, sometimes it's going to be a little bit less. Again, this is just sort of something you have to deal with. There's really no quick solution to this. This is just a dev problem. They need to work on it. I put this note in here because I saw this on Reddit from a user mentioning that this was a viable strat. I haven't tested it because I am not a bomber build, but I did want to include it, you know, just as a tip, and I will give them credit. Their Reddit name is Demico, and it was a thread on the Prime Wars, and it said, just wanted to add, if you're building a bomber elemental build, you'll actually do more damage than biomissiles with atomic lighters, since they do blast damage and aren't affected by the shield's damage reduction because they're not tactical items. And then he emphasizes that tactical items like grenades actually also have reduced damage. These are crafted in synth bins, while lighters are crafted in supplies bench. Now, the only problem I have with this, I'm not saying that he's wrong in terms of it will do good damage, but they are considered tactical items, at least according to the description. So I'm not sure why they're not getting the reduction. They do say they're tactical items. I have tested this when you use one, or I should say my friend tested this. When you use one, it does trigger the perk for having used a tactical item. So, which is the Master Tactician perk that you can get in your backpack. Which it gives you extra damage against great ones when you use a tactical item. Like, this confirms that it is considered a tactical item, which means it should be doing reduced damage. I don't know if this is a bug. Maybe the developers forgot to include the lighters as an item that is considered tactical and reduces damage. I'm not 100% sure. So take this with a grain of salt. This may be one of those things that gets changed, and maybe it's a bug. But for now, I have at least confirmed that it does do more damage, and it is a viable way to do some damage outside of your missiles if you don't have any missiles. But again, it's very narrow scope because you have to be a bomber elemental build specifically in order to really take advantage of this. But if you are, give it a shot. Let me know in the comments how your testing goes, what kind of damage you're able to pull off. He did include a screenshot with his post saying that he was hitting for almost 20,000 damage with the lighters using a blast build. So, you know, give it a shot if you want to avoid using the missiles. If you've got the 3x perk, they're not very expensive, but this would still be cheaper, right? Because it would just be deviant materials, some acid and some glass in order to make them. For a little bit of a breakdown on what you should bring in terms of rockets to each difficulty, this is, I know, something a lot of people want to know. On average, I would say you need about 60 rockets for easy and hard mode, and about 80 to 100 for pro, and 150 plus for nightmare. Averaging all this out, I would always try to bring around 100 if possible, just to be safe, because again, it's going to depend on how much damage is in your instance when you're running it. If you've got a lot of damage, you may only need like 60. If you don't have a lot of damage and you got to go through multiple phases, you might need more like 100. So I would say bring 100 as an average, and always try and bring 150, 200 to nightmare, because you're going to be shooting off a lot more, and there's a lot more bosses got to be killed in that. If you have the perk for red plasma, I would really only use it in nightmare. I wouldn't really use it before then, unless you're just flush with materials and you don't care. But if you're at that point, you're probably already running nightmare anyway. If there's less than 10 players in the Prime War, it's not worth it. Don't go in there unless it's like easy difficulty. Even then, depending on how much resources you have available, it may not be worth using your rockets. If nobody's shooting rockets, in there. Don't bother DPSing the boss with just your ammo. It's not going to do enough. It's just going to waste a lot of resources. And then I wanted to include a little bit of an explanation for the nightmare stuff, which we'll get into, and we'll show some footage here in a moment. But in the nightmare difficulty, all the bosses spawn. So all three of the different type of bosses will spawn, and they'll drop a sort of a red plasma looking orb thing when they're killed. You pick that up, and it allows you to shoot it at the manibus tentacles in the sky. They have to be hit a certain amount of times before they become vulnerable to damage. This is why you got to bring so many rockets, because you're gonna have to kill these bosses over and over and over and over and over again in order to get enough of this red plasma that they pop out of them in order to actually kill the manibus tentacles. Luckily, the bosses in here are more like mini bosses compared to like how hard they are in the other ones. They're relatively easy to kill, and also if you're doing them when the content is current, there's a lot more people in there generally. I found in the nightmare ones trying to get the damage in, so that it's generally not a big problem, at least on my server. Your mileage may vary there depending on how active your server is and how many well-geared people you've got running around. So that should pretty much cover everything you really need to know in order to get your Prime War farming done and to be a contributing member of the Prime War. It's really a server-wide activity. It really requires everybody to be contributing to a decent degree, which means bringing your missiles, doing good damage at the right times, building defensive structures when necessary, not blocking other people's view, don't stand in front of people's turrets when they're trying to fire, things like that. There's a lot of common sense stuff. Hopefully you have a good server community and people are working together. Shout outs to PvE 15, the server that I'm on. Fantastic community so far. Getting a lot of love on the videos from these guys. They're always out here helping each other. They're always out here spreading knowledge of how to do the deviants and how to do Prime Wars and all that kind of stuff with each other. I get comments all the time on the videos from people in the community and people that sub from this server in particular. If you're also on this server, shout outs to you. You guys are fantastic. I very much appreciate all the support I've been getting from you guys. If you don't have that kind of community, you know, try to use this video to, you know, rally your community, explain to them what it is they need to be doing. Maybe even hand them the video and say, hey, watch this. If it answered all your questions and you found it very, very helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would share it around and spread the knowledge. That way everybody can have better Prime Wars. I'd also appreciate it if you drop a like, comment down below that the video helped you, and maybe even consider subscribing to the channel. We've got over 200 videos on Once Human already made, and we're always planning to make more and more and more, especially when a new season drops. If we get a new map, I'm going to be right on top of it, trying to bring you guys all the latest tutorial information about where to find the new deviants, where to find any new recipes, any new unlocks, all that kind of stuff. So keep it tuned right here for more Once Human content. Hope you guys are enjoying this game as much as I am. Happy hunting out there, and peace. I'm gonna end the video off here with some footage from the nightmare difficulty of the Prime War. If you guys are wanting to kind of see a little bit of what nightmare looks like in the processes you're gonna go through for fighting the nightmare. You know, it'll be unedited, just sort of some raw footage, so you guys can get a look at it if you're interested. And I'll catch you in the next one. permanently immune, or